Anisio Resem is a co-founder and the current president of the Spiritist Society of San Diego in California. He has been active in the Spiritist movement for more than 20 years. He studied and collaborated in institutions like Spiritist Federation of the State of São Paulo and the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center of Campinas, both in Brazil. He has also been deeply involved with the study and practice of mediumship inside the Spiritist framework for more than 10 years. Mr. Resem has a degree in electrical engineering with specializations in business management and software engineering. So we ask you all to join us in welcoming Mr. Resem.
So grateful to be here with you after a break, right? A little hard, so really grateful to be here, but I'm gonna ask you guys to work a little bit with me, right? Let's work together, right? Let's do a work together, some work together, and what we do, what's the best thing we can do together? Maybe the best thing we can do together is to synchronize our thoughts, share our minds. And what I'm going to ask you to do is it's going to be very brief, but just for a few minutes, share a few thoughts with me, right? Some people call it a prayer, but we'll call it just a quick interaction of thoughts. Just with me. Some of you, if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes a little bit if you feel comfortable. But let's just, mostly important, synchronize our thoughts. And it goes more or less like this. I'm so grateful to be here today. I'm so grateful to be alive. And I have gratitude in my mind in this moment. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. It doesn't matter what happened in the future. Now, I have gratitude in my mind. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We even got a little bit of music in the background. That was great. That was actually improvised. Thank you very much. So we're going to be talking today, in this part actually, about the propagation, right, of spiritual concepts, right? What is spirituality? What is spirituality? That's a very interesting question, right? So what is spirituality? Sounds like a simple question. I don't know if you've tried to answer that before, but try it in your mind to what you visualize when we talk about spirituality. And you might, I don't know if you ever have one of those friends that, ask them, what's your religion, or what you do with something, they tell you, yeah, I'm spiritual. I'm not religious, though. I'm a spiritual person. And some people, you ask them, oh, I'm a spiritual person, yes. And what do you do? I'm actually looking to my nutrition. I'm vegan. Or I'm vegetarian. Or I take care of animals. Or I actually help people here or there. That's spirituality, right? So there's no common, widely accepted definition of spirituality. If you actually take the time to go to Wikipedia, our new source of information in the modern world, and it's pretty stable, I've been checking for a few days now, it actually agrees that, or states that there's no common agreed definition of spirituality. Nobody agrees, because it means something different for somebody, from one person, and if you talk to somebody else, it's something completely different, because it's how we feel it. Is that a problem there? No, but sometimes we need concepts to define things so we can start working and build something on top of it, right? I don't know about you, but I took a flight coming here from California, and if I asked the pilot, you know how to pilot this flight? I know the answer. I want him to tell me yes, and I know what he means. He does know how to control the machine. And in fact, it was a fantastic trip. If you have a friend and you ask him, do you know how to drive? And you're about to get in a ride with him, you have a very specific meaning. You don't want things to be floating in the air. So can you take me here safely to another place? Should I trust you in driving me around? So we're going to do that right now with spirituality. We are going to define a concept. We're going to work. And by the way, this has been fantastic because that's what has happened since in the morning. We have had fantastic, lectures and discussions about spirituality. And if you think about, we can actually just say that there's 5 elements that we're going to define as spirituality according to our concept, according to Spiritism, according to what we are going to be working with today. 5 concepts. You can say that. First, we are not the body. And we had a fantastic lecture just a little bit behind me that was actually gave us very deep concepts on that. But fundamentally, what does that mean? I'm not my body. I'm a system that's composed of what we call an energy, or a spirit, and a body. So right now, your minds, what you're thinking right now, looking at me, is the manifestation of your spirit. Our brain is not everything. It's just an organ that manifests intelligence. That's the first one. How powerful is this? Very powerful. First one. The second one, of course, a consequence of that is that, of course, if I'm a spirit, it is energy that actually not bound to my body, there's a way for this energy to communicate with us right now. And you'll heard a lot about that through mediumship. People, a lot of discussions about that. That's natural. 13, reincarnation. This is not our first trip here. We have been here before. We have done a lot of things. We have learned things in the past, and we will in the future. It's the way it is. Number 4, divinity. The loving creator. The source, the intelligence, the creative intelligence of the universe, the initial source of everything. And number 5, evolution. We evolve. Fundamentally, we evolve all the time. We are in this evolving universe. But the first 3, especially if we think about the first 3, either it is or not. Either I am or I'm not a spirit. And we are here clearly telling you we are spirits. We are more than our material bodies. We are this intelligence that actually manifests and continue to live after the body and was alive and well before. So in that sense, is that something natural or not? If it is, it is. And it has been natural since the beginning of time, since ever. It's a natural law. Is it a spiritist law? Is it ours? So do we own it? Does any religion, does any philosophy, does any line of thinking owns it? No. Because it must be a natural way, the way the universe is. And this discussion we're having right now, it sounds logic to us, isn't it? If something is natural, it's something that's just the way it is. Because nature is like that. Are you all with me on that? If it is, it is. This thought's new. Because it started like about 300 years ago with the Illuminism, with the scientific revolution. And that's why in order to understand, maybe compare the propagation of spiritual concepts in the sense we are talking about right now, we can look at other natural laws and how they propagate and how the propagation happened. And of course, I'm going to draw a comparison with something we're very familiar with, which is gravity. Are you familiar with gravity? Oh, hell yes. And the older you get, the more familiar you get with it. Just happens. I don't know what happens with gravity and age and hair. I don't know. I just leave you. We deal with gravity every single day. We have been dealing with it since the beginning of time. Our best calculations right now that our planet's about 3-4 billion years old, and it was formed by gravity. As far as we can look back in the universe, gravity has been around. And we know that since we have been here, gravity has been around. But did we understand it? No. We did not understand. We dealt with it for a long time. We even have many people studying and trying to come up with explanations, but we mostly credit nowadays Isaac Newton, a very interesting scientist and persona that lived about 300 years ago, to actually put together the full understanding of gravity. He was able to express in mathematical equations the forces of gravity, so it set it free to every single one of us to study it, to understand it, and to use it. And for the first time, the notion, oh, wait a minute, there's logic in the universe, was born. Are you saying that gravity is explainable, and there's even a mathematical language that can tell us exactly how it behaves? And not just on Earth. By the way, we have sent probes to Mars. How cool is that? We have sent probes, actually, one of the oldest probes we sent out actually has left, I forgot the name of it, but I forgot actually the solar system a few years ago, like last year. The Voyager, right? So what happened is all those things, all those concepts were open because this man, but it's not, of course, he was the one that compiled it, but explained to us in terms that we could actually not refute, and simply made it available to all of us. Not all of us. I don't know how many of you study the three laws of mechanics and understand gravitational and would be able to design a rocket, but many people do. But that's, how did we live before we understood that? No problem. We were dealing with gravity, we were dealing with the things in our life the same way. We just didn't realize it. But when we did realize, it transformed our life. And you're going to agree with me that our lives have changed tremendously with the scientific revolution. You guys agree with me? If you go back in history, depending on where you came from, depending on if you had a chance to talk to your grandparents, or our lives 200-300 years ago, it was just unimaginable. The lack of resources compared to what we have today. The amount of change was incredible, because this brought this whole thinking, this whole idea of how to approach the universe around us. When it comes to spirituality, if it's a natural concept, if it is part of life, can we avoid it? Let me tell you something. Let me ask you something. If Newton was abandoned by his mom when he was actually 2-3 years old. His dad passed away very early, before he was born. He had a very difficult life. What if he had gave up? He said, you know what? This thing about studying physics and mathematics, I don't want to do it. And we had not had the understanding of gravity coming from him. Would it have changed? Would gravity change? No. No. I hope you agree with me. It wouldn't have changed. It would be the same. We would be what? Delayed. We would be delayed. And maybe instead of actually flying here from California, I would be probably walking here, and my wife would be now looking to another husband because I wouldn't be back in the next 20 years. The laws of nature are what they are. The creation is done, and we're just navigating. Spirituality is a law of nature on those 4 or 5 topics we talked about. It's the way it is. So we are spirits. We are this energy. The nomenclature may change. The way we're going to call things and manifest and understand the mathematics that will come out of it to model, life, and to model disease, and to model cure. All those things will change. All those things will have their own shape, and they will evolve. But there's no escaping of reality. Not a single one of us will die. Ever. So, this is going to be proved somehow, soon, beyond questions. But why it has not? Why it has not? If it's part of nature, why are we, not talking about that? Why we are not all of us talking about that like we are about gravity? Well, one of the key elements for understanding, one of the key elements is something called critical mass. Critical mass. Do you think Newton was the first one to probably came up with those ideas? It's so funny because if you look into the history, Newton did most of his work in gravity when he was in his 20s. 20 years old, he was a kind of weird guy who worked like for 18 months on a problem. And he put it aside in a drawer, just had some paper in a drawer. Like 15, 20 years later, Halley, actually the one that we named the comet after, came to talk to him. Hey, we have these problems here. We know that the stars move in a certain form. We know it's the square of the distance. The force is key, but we don't know how to model it. He just asked this to Newton and said, I know it. Oh, I did a calculation. Nobody has ever done that. And then all of a sudden, you have the answer for this problem? Yes, I do. That's what Newton said. What is the critical mass? The critical mass is we have to be ready. We have to be ready as a society to receive the understanding of life, to understanding of nature, to not be shocked, to deal with it in a constructive way. What is the major fear right now in our society when it comes to spirituality? Why you talk to scientists today and they almost run from you? Yep, our attitude. Those that sometimes talk about spirituality or religion or any forms are sometimes the most difficult because our actions have taken us into directions of destruction and complications. How much pain in the world right now, how much suffering comes from those that believe in spirituality, from those that claim to understand the divine. That's where we all come to play. Every one of us. Every single one of us is at play here. What we're talking about is delay and suffering. We have been blessed by a tool, by a philosophy that unravels to us the knowledge that will be available to everybody unequivocally in the future. We have it now. We have it available. We now have the key to understand the teachings of love and compassion deeply. But it's up to us to prepare the mass. It's up to us to give the example, to live and transform spirituality into something that we want to manifest. And how do we do that? How do we do that? Every day. How many of you go on a regular basis, on a show of hands, to a Spiritist center? And how many of you go to a temple of any sort that deals with spirituality on a regular basis? When we go to those temples, how do we deal with our brothers and sisters? How do we deal with the people that come to us? How do we deal with that difficult person? How do we deal with the person that actually has been to a million places and still looking and talks too much and tests our patience? How do we deal with the skepticals that actually come just to bother us? How do we deal with this depressed, now almost an epidemic in our society. And you try to explain them, give them strength, and they actually convince you that you're wrong and things are going to get even worse and the world's going to end. And pretty much soon, if you don't keep an eye open, if you blink, it's going to be over. How do we deal with that? How do we interact with our families? How do we interact with those that actually don't understand us? And we had so many opportunities today. How do we interact with those that don't understand and hurt us? That is the way we are going to change. That's the way we're going to change our society. Some of us here, maybe here or somewhere else, may have the scientific knowledge to actually make the leap to the new society, to understand, to bring it. And we're going there. We're going to be there soon. But it's up to all of us to manifest in our lives the critical mass, the preparation, the living the spiritual life. So people would look at us and say, oh, there's some advantage in this thing. It's one of the most frustrating things when you imagine if you go to a new place to learn about a philosophy, and the person that's actually teaching about a philosophy is crying and suffering and pain and there's just bad mounting and all remoting all those negative energies. That's the critical mission we all have. The critical point for all of us is that. And when we understand the gospel of Jesus and when we understand the fundamental teaching is actually the development of love in our lives. And we have a very simple understanding. And for some people, when we still talk about love, they still have this, concept of religion or some sort of sweetie kind of artificial thing that we created ourselves, or philosophical religious people created themselves to like it. But when we look at the way nature is in reality, why love is so logical and so necessary? Because nobody dies. Because all the relationships we have are forever. Yes, every single relationship you have had is with someone that will never die. What is the value of those relationships? All the things we have right now, all the material things will perish. They are just for this cycle, for this passage. The only thing that survives is the soul, is the spirit. That's why in the core of teachings of Christianity, of Spiritism, and all philosophies that lead to spiritual development is compassion and love. Because we know that the relationships we're bringing right now are the relationships among immortal spirits. And if you have been in a relationship, you know how important it is to make it a good one. And if this relationship is going to last forever, what is the end state of all relationships? Has to be love, because it's the ultimate goal. You probably all, like me, may have been in relationships that are not loving. They may be painful, may be difficult, disturbing. But if this relationship is forever, it will evolve to love. It will evolve to this connection. And that has nothing to do with philosophy. Has simply a consequence of the natural world we have around us. And you understand that we can now look around and gorge in the society we have today in terms of all the advancements we had because of scientific revolution, because of understanding of gravity. So I think we all benefit. We can probably, if we just do a little bit of effort, we can grasp, right, how much our lives have improved because of the scientific revolution. How do you think our lives are going to change when the spiritual revolution, whatever you call it, a transition, manifests. When everybody understands, when the common knowledge among us will be, yes, I'll never die. Yes, I'm spirit. Yes, I'm energy, and I'm going to be around for as much as I can imagine. What is the impact that's going to have in our lives? Hard to grasp, but it's going to be tremendous. It's going to be unbelievably powerful. We are on the verge of this. And I know some of us, we still struggle because we don't believe it's a natural thing. We still think, no, I think it's going to go wrong. It might not happen. Something's going to fail. There's a comet somewhere coming to Earth. There's something bad about to happen. No matter what happens, nothing can change gravity. Nothing. Even a black hole. And you probably heard about this. Science loves to talk about this because it's so destructive and so powerful. It does not change the law of gravity. Nothing can change the law of gravity. And if spirituality is a natural law, what can change spirituality? Nothing. It will happen one way or another. Our choice today is how quick? 1,000 years? 10,000 years? 4 or 5 world wars? Or the next decade? I know many of you don't believe this, that you are powerful. We are all powerful to change that. And if there's one thing I want to leave you, is that who knows how powerful your actions can be. What if the grandparents of Newton had gave up on their kid? What if Chico Xavier was not around? Allan Kardec? What if our codifier had get tired of the fight, of all the difficulties? Who knows who is in our family? Who knows is coming to our Spiritist centers, to our temples of faith? Who knows is in our family? Who knows if within us is not the key to the immediate liberation of our planet? It is. It's in our hands. With that in mind, when things get out of control, let's just bring that thought to our minds like we did in the beginning of our prayer. And for 2-3 minutes, be thankful that we have been given the opportunity by our Creator to be here, alive, in this planet, in spirit or in the flesh, to witness and be part of one of the most beautiful transformations that's about to happen. God bless you. God bless all of us.